Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special hearing of the Preservation Commission. I'll call tonight's meeting to order. We have a quorum of 6 commissioners. The Preservation Ordinance empowers the body to safeguard our city's historic and cultural heritage and to oversee and administer our community's historic preservation program. The Commission is tasked with identifying and preserving historic, cultural, and architectural resources. During our public meetings, we encourage public participation, afford due process through public hearings on proposed landmark designations, as well as reviewing and making determinations on applications for certificates of appropriateness. And we also discuss ways to advance long-range planning goals beyond case review. And so with that, do we have anyone here tonight who would like to speak for public comment? Before that, may I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
All right.
Actually, I don't, how do we? Okay. Sure. I would like to make a motion for 2 Pres 0120 landmark nomination 2700 Hurd Avenue, commonly known as Willard Elementary School, to have a public hearing on the proposed nomination considering all testimony or evidence relating to the designation criteria and subsections. Tiny. 2-8-4A and B. Should I keep reading it?
All right. Do we have a second? Second. All right. So now that we have officially opened the public hearing, do we have anyone here tonight who would like to provide public comment? All right. Seeing none, we will now move forward. Mr. Weber, you can start your presentation.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate you all being here on this snow emergency day. I'm genuinely excited tonight to talk about 3 things that I really care deeply about: history, architecture, and schools. I'll start with a little bit about me and why I'm here. My wife and I, Anna, moved to Evanston about 5 years ago, in part because we loved its beautiful older buildings, including Willard, which sits just down the block from our house, which was built in 1924, just 2 years after Willard was constructed in 1922. I attended Indiana University for undergrad, taught middle school math at a public school in Hawaii through Teach for America, and then I attended Harvard Law School, where I took a seminar on local government and historic preservation. I'm now an attorney in Chicago. I also participated in District 65 Structural Deficit Reduction Plan process earlier this year as a member of the Finance Committee, where I learned that the district's September 25th, 2025 recent property assessment identified Willard as eligible for local landmark designation. I then dug into the history and quickly realized that Willard easily meets the criteria for landmarking, which is why I submitted my nomination. To be clear, I'm not here to do anything that would hurt the school district. As a former public school teacher, few things are more important to me than ensuring that we prioritize student learning, and I would not do anything to hamper that. Instead, I'm here because Willard is a historic anchor of our neighborhood, and it deserves recognition. So with that, let me walk you through why I think Willard should be designated as a local landmark. And hopefully you can all see the presentation. So here's the roadmap. First, I'll talk about Francis Willard, the school's namesake. Next, I'll walk through the school's architects, Henry Rader, and later Childs and Smith. Then I'll discuss Willard's century-long role as a cornerstone of Northwest Evanston. And then finally, I'll explain why this designation is largely honorary and does not constrain District 65's operations. So let's start with Francis Willard. Here are the criteria. Sorry, it's so small. Frances Willard, the school's namesake, was one of the most influential social reformers in American history. A school named to honor her life and legacy clearly satisfies several landmark criteria. Here are the specific criteria. Criteria number 2, it's identification with a person who significantly contributed to the historic, cultural, or related aspect of the development of the city or the United States. Criteria number 6, its association with important cultural, social, or political aspects or events in the history of the city or the United States. Frances Willard served for 19 years as the president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which at the time was the largest women's organization in the nation. Under her Do Everything platform, Willard championed not only temperance, but also women's suffrage, economic and religious rights, child protection laws, labor reform, including the 8-hour workday, public health projects, poverty alleviation, and prison reform. She was arguably the most famous American woman of the late 19th century. Her influence reached far beyond the United States. And although she was a national and even international figure, Willard was deeply rooted here. The sign outside her Evanston home, which is now a National Historic Landmark, reflects that connection. In fact, one historian went so far as to call her, quote, incontestably Evanston's greatest citizen. Willard adored Evanston. She called it, quote, a human oasis, and wrote, quote, when I reach heaven, I want to register as from Evanston. She even wrote an entire book about Evanston titled A Classic Town, The Story of Evanston, which included an entire chapter on our public schools. Willard also broke barriers as the first woman dean at Northwestern, and she was the president of the Evanston College for Ladies. This is her handwriting showing that she was the president of the college as of 1871. Here you see a photo of the cover of Willard's most recent biography, published in 2022 by Boston University professor emeritus and historian Christopher Evans. After reading this book, I spoke with Professor Evans about my nomination. After our discussion, Professor Evans wrote to the District 65 School Board, noting that Willard, quote, stood alongside Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton as one of the most important women's rights leaders of her time, end quote. He also pointed out that at the time, some people, including several newspapers, had stated that had women been allowed to vote when Frances Willard was alive, then they would have elected Frances Willard as the first president, or the first female president of the United States. Willard's organization, the WCTU, which was once one of the largest women's organizations in the world, also wrote to the District 65 School Board recently. The WCTU emphasized how Willard used her home in Evanston as, quote, as a base for launching national reforms, and explained that keeping her name on a building offers the community, quote, a powerful, accessible example of civic engagement and social responsibility. Willard's death in 1898 sparked international mourning. Newspapers reported, quote, worldwide grief, and that women of all lands mourn the loss of Miss Willard. As Professor Evans noted in his book, the public response to Willard's passing rivaled that following the deaths of Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant, underscoring her stature in American life. Willard's legacy was cemented when she became the first woman honored with a statue in the U.S. Capitol's Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C. 2 years after ratification of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed women the right to vote, Evanston named its new school after Frances Willard. Willard School was the first public building in Evanston named for a woman. And even today, over a century later, Willard will be the only public school in Evanston named for a woman following the closure of Bessie Rhodes School next school year. As you see here, contemporary editorials praise the decision to name the new school after Willard, calling Frances Willard, quote, the greatest woman that has called Evanston home. Here, you'll see that an early student wrote that he felt, quote, honor in attending a school named for such a noteworthy woman. By preserving the building, we honor a woman who reshaped national life and loved this community. Now let's turn to the building's architect, Henry Rader. Henry Rader, Willard's architect, was an important figure in the Chicago School of Architecture, and he worked extensively throughout the Midwest. He was primarily known for his institutional and commercial buildings, large functional structures that blended innovative construction techniques with classical design elements. His work satisfies several landmark criteria. Here are those criteria. Criteria number 2, its identification with a person who significantly contributed to the architectural development of the city, state, and or Midwest region. Category number 3, its exemplification of an architectural type, style, design, or type of construction distinguished by innovation, rarity, uniqueness, or overall quality of design, details, materials, or craftsmanship. And category number 4, its identification as the work of an architect, designer, engineer, developer, or builder whose individual work is significant in the history or development of the city, the state, or the Midwest region. Now let's take a look at Rader's career. Rader was born in 1857, earning his engineering degree from MIT in 1876, and he lived in several cities before settling in Evanston. One of his signature buildings is the American Furniture Mart at 680 North Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. Completed in 1923, it was the largest building in the world devoted to a single industry, and some sources even say that it was the largest building in the world, period. The building occupies an entire city block and features a dramatic 474-foot Gothic Revival tower with blue and gold terracotta spires at the top. It remains a defining feature of the Streeterville skyline today and is both a Chicago landmark and on the National Register of Historic Places. Rader also designed several other commercial buildings in the Midwest. My clicker might have died. Let me see. Is there another way I can? Oh. Okay, I just have to push harder. For example, Rader designed an early Chicago school skyscraper in Duluth, Minnesota in 1889, which was considered highly innovative for the time, especially for such a young architect. Rader was only 32 years old at the time. In 1896, Rader designed the Century Building in St. Louis, a 10-story landmark that was on the National Register of Historic Places before its demolition in 2004. He also designed Hotel Maytag in Newton, Iowa, which is a 5-story brick and terracotta hotel commissioned in 1926 by appliance magnate F.L. Maytag. It is a Newton, Iowa landmark and on the National Register of Historic Places. Moving closer to home, Rader's architectural footprint is especially visible here in Evanston. Rader designs multiple Evanston landmarks. Among them is Orrington Elementary School, built in 1911, and today a local landmark and on the National Register of Historic Places. With Orrington and Willard, Rader helped define the architectural character of Evanston's public schools. Rader also designed several important residential buildings in Evanston, including 1742 Asbury Avenue, which was built in 1889 and is a local landmark and on the National Register. Rader also designed several other Evanston residences, all of which are local landmarks and on the National Register of Historic Places, including 2236 Orrington Avenue, which was built in 1895, 1733 Asbury Avenue, which was built in 1890, and 1104 Greenwood Street, which was built in 1892. In total, Rader designed 5 other Evanston landmarks besides Willard, in addition to his major commercial work across the Midwest. Most important for our purposes, though, Rader designed Willard School. Rader was selected in 1922 to construct Willard School, a 12-room school building for 400 students with a gym, assembly hall, library, lab, clinic, kitchens, and teacher spaces. Newspapers described Willard's, quote, huge round arch cathedral windows that would, quote, flood the gymnasium and assembly hall with light. These windows, as well as the windows of all classrooms, were to be, quote, capped by round arches of terracotta, which would be uniquely outlined against the background of brick. The school's design draws from the Georgian Revival style, with classical proportions, brick symmetry, decorative details, and large multi-pane windows. Willard fits squarely within that style and carries the hallmarks of Rader's architectural design. Rader's architectural footprint therefore spans several Midwest cities, landmark commercial structures, and some of Evanston's most important civic and residential buildings. Together with Rader's other work, Willard is a part of a meaningful legacy in Evanston's built environment. Let's now move on to Willard's second important architect, Childs and Smith. Due to rapid growth in the area, the school district hired Childs and Smith in 1931 to construct a 2-story north addition and a 1-story southwest addition to Willard School. Childs and Smith was another major Evanston architectural firm well known for its institutional work, especially schools throughout the Midwest. Like Rader, Childs and Smith also designed several local landmarks. For example, in 1929, Childs and Smith designed Nichols Middle School, which is a local landmark and on the National Register. Childs and Smith also designed Haven Middle School in 1927, also a local landmark. And Childs designed the 1931 addition to Orrington Elementary School, which we've already discussed, is also a local landmark. In 1926, Childs and Smith also helped design the Weibolt Hall of Commerce on Northwestern Streeterville campus, which is a Chicago landmark and on the National Register. And Childs and Smith designed Goodrich House on Northwestern's campus here in Evanston in 1932, which is a local landmark and on the National Register. In addition, Childs designed several local residential landmarks such as 802 Clinton Place and several other Evanston buildings. Outside the Chicago area, Childs and Smith designed other schools and buildings across the Midwest, including several other schools, such as this one in Jackson, Michigan in 1926, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. Childs and Smith's work on Willard School reinforces the school's historic and architectural significance. The final set of criteria relates to Willard's longstanding presence as an established feature of Northwest Evanston. Here are some of the relevant criteria. Criteria number 9, its distinctive physical appearance or presence representing an established and familiar visual feature of a neighborhood, community, or the city. Category number 10, its exemplification of a pattern of neighborhood development or settlement significant to the cultural history or traditions of the city. Willard sits in Northwest Evanston on the corner of Park Place and Hurd Avenue in an area that grew dramatically in the 1920s and 30s, just before the streetcar service was ended. The school became a natural civic anchor during this wave of neighborhood development. As you can see in this map of local landmarks around Willard, there's a high concentration of historic structures near Willard, a reflection of the neighborhood's architectural character. And here's a satellite image of the area. You can see Willard School and its grounds form a substantial part of this neighborhood, and that Willard School is a visual anchor here. You can also see that Willard sits just 2 blocks north of the historic West Central Street commercial corridor, reflecting its civic prominence. And as you may be able to read here in the smaller print, in this excerpt from an August draft of Envision Evanston, Willard was described as, quote, a cultural and institutional landmark, end quote. And residents have long remarked on Willard's visual importance to the city. Here's an excerpt from a 1980 Evanston Review article remarking that Willard looked like it had been painted by Norman Rockwell and that it was already evoking a sense of nostalgia even 50 years ago from today. Culturally, Willard has also been an important gathering place for more than a century. Willard has hosted countless community events, sports, science summits, art fairs, theater, elections, rallies, puppet shows, pie eating contests, charity drives, and even a Black History Hall of Fame. I invite anyone interested to search the library's old newspaper records for thousands of mentions of Willard School over the past 103 years. Here are just a few excerpts of these events from my review of these archives. There have been marches, including this one to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There have been various different exhibits, including this one on dinosaurs. There have been visits from famous individuals like poet Angela Jackson, who was Illinois' Poet Laureate in 2020. And there have been visits from prominent Willard alumni, including Charlie Gibson, the 20-year host of ABC's Good Morning America and the evening anchor of NBC's Nightly News. There have been annual carnivals, and there have been murals painted, and there have been generations of memories from thousands of Evanston kids and families over the past 103 years for which the building served as a public school. On top of all of this, Willard Elementary has ranked among the best schools in the state several times. In 2009, Willard ranked 7th in the state, and the 6 schools ahead of it were selective admission schools or for gifted children. And Willard has been integral to the district's 60-year integration efforts. In sum, then, Willard is not just a building, it is a civic institution. And although this is not a factor that the commission needs to weigh, I want to address it because it comes up often. This nomination is not intended to impose financial or operational burdens on District 65. It is simply to honor a building that matters to our community. As you know, the district is governed by state school code, not local building codes. So as long as the district owns and operates Willard, designation does not restrict it. And this isn't the only landmarked school in Evanston. Here are the other 6 schools that are landmarked by the city of Evanston, including 5 operated by District 65. You can see that 3 of the buildings were constructed after Willard was built in 1922. And you can see that Rader and/or Childs and Smith designed several of these landmark schools. Adding Willard to this list continues a long Evanston tradition of recognizing the architectural and civic importance of public school buildings. The district's own real estate appraisal already appears to treat Willard as an eligible landmark. Designation will therefore celebrate Willard's rich history without affecting the district's vital work of educating our children. So tonight I've walked through each set of criteria: Francis Willard's national and local importance, Rader and Childs and Smith's architectural significance, Willard's century-long role in Northwest Evanston, and the lack of burden on the school district. For these reasons, I respectfully request that you approve the nomination and recommend landmark designation to the City Council. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I ask the district? Okay, for presentation or questions? Any prepared comments? Okay. Does anyone representing the District 65 have anything prepared to share at this meeting?
We don't have any additional comment.
Okay, all right, thank you. So now we move into questions from the commission on the presentation. So if you want to ask Mr. Weber any questions about his presentation, feel free to right now.
Do you have any idea why no one has nominated this before?
I don't know. I think I've asked Kate, but he just said no one has done it.
I have a question. So Mr. Rader attended MIT, right? Do you know if that was around the time that like other local architects were attending MIT, like Howard Van Doren Shaw, I think, attended MIT maybe around that time? Because it seems to be like there was this big contingent of Midwest architects that went to MIT and then came back to the North Shore and built, their career here.
I had read that MIT was kind of a breeding ground for prominent architects in the Chicago area. Rader was from the East Coast, but I don't know if he was there around the same time as other architects, but could look into it if that's something the commission's interested in.
MIT is one of the most important, important is the wrong word, historic architecture schools in the in the country in terms of the development of the profession of architecture. It has a fascinating history in its own right. And I did not realize that there was a potential connection. So you learn something new every night. I have a question actually for Cade, which may turn into a question for you. The integrity. Mr. Weber did not address that. So do we need to worry about that? I'm confused.
I don't think you need to worry that he didn't address
Right.
the integrity
Well,
issue.
I would ask him about it, but we have to be, when we are thinking about whether this is eligible, integrity is an issue. is
Correct.
something
It's
right.
one or more of the 10 criteria.
Plus the
and
integrity.
Does it have sufficient integrity to
Okay.
communicate that past effectively?
Got it.
Yep.
So, Mr. Weber, can you address the integrity question, please?
Yeah, great point. First of all, I am not an architect, so integrity feels a little bit above my pay grade. But I do know that the original structure is still there. The 1931 edition on the are still there. There was a 2001 or 2010. Don't quote me. Let me see here. 2001 is what the city's memo from Cade says. Single story edition on the north side. If you look at Willard, it blends in with the rest of the school with brick, and it copied the similar window toppings. It didn't take anything away from the original structure, just added it on the north side. But as far as I know, it features substantial integrity. And if you want further, in addition to Cade's memo, you can look at the Evanston-Skokie School District 65 property assessment submission, which says that on page 92 says that the existing school structure is, quote, historic in nature and features substantial integrity. So that's what I know about that.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but I wanted to make sure it was said in public by the person who is putting it forward in the nomination. I have another question, if that's okay with everybody. Are we talking about just the building, or are we also including the grounds?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not aware of landmarking grounds. I don't, if that's a possibility potentially. I don't know. I imagine it applies only to the building because the code regulates the outside structure of the building. But that is a good question, and something that hopefully someone on the board or on the commission who is more knowledgeable on these things can address.
All right, so then we'll ask Kate. So is it the entire parcel?
So we designate, when you designate a landmark, you're not designating structures, you're designating the pin or the property, the
whole
parcel,
parcel, yeah.
which includes the grounds. There are some unique circumstances, and the commission has the ability through, if it moves forward with this process, writing the report to recommend specific guidelines. One of those could be that the landmark designation only applies to the building itself. Going kind of full circle to your original question, when you talk about architectural integrity, certainly the environment and the setting that building
Right.
is in, those two things are very difficult, if not impossible, to disconnect from each other.
Well, I mean, setting is one of the 7 criteria, elements of integrity. So if the nomination includes the parcel, then we need to consider the grounds as well. Do you have, so now a question coming back to you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that came up in your research that shows the design of the grounds from when it was done, or like gives us some sense? Sanborn maps?
I went and I actually looked at the deeds for Willard. There are quite a few parcels. I think there are like, 20 parcels or so, all dating at different times. Some what looks like were acquired by eminent domain, which is interesting. But and I submitted a FOIA request to the district for all blueprints, schematics, and designs associated with Willard School, and didn't receive any in response. But happy to explore that further.
Did you look at the Sanborn maps yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because there might be something there.
Right.
I go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, because one of the criteria that you gave as a reason for landmark designation was the development and evolution of Northwest Evanston, and
Right.
I think it's in the memo too that talks about the that Northwest Evanston has significant number of mature trees
Right.
because it was still a rural area and it was one of the last areas of the
Yep.
city to develop. So I'm just wondering if I guess, looking at maps and if you do have anything from the district eventually come your way, that maybe there was an intention to keep some of that, landscape intact and include it in the potential school
Right. Yeah, that
property.
definitely makes sense.
I'm guessing, right? If in your research, did you find anything about that? Like that there was an effort to
I mean,
include
they
that?
they clearly were. The school district was clearly acquiring the grounds as the school was constructed, and they were adding to it whenever possible. So after the school's construction, they added parcels over the next decade or so, and presumably to have grounds that the students could use and play in. And then in addition, the city's memo, there are about 4 paragraphs on setting. Living in the area, it's essentially a park. It's essentially a public park that people use, go to play, walk their dogs, play soccer, all sorts of sports events and community events. Half of the Northwest Evanston section of my presentation took place outside on the grounds, like the circus and they had a petting zoo and all sorts of things happened outside, or the sporting events all happened outside. So it seems like the grounds are intertwined with the school itself in terms of that component of the landmark nomination.
So did you see anything from the city when they were expanding on Central, were there plans for city parks or anything? It seems like they were in tandem, like they were doing a 2-for-1. They were developing
Right.
a school, and then also the grounds then became a potential park. Because
Right.
are there any other
Yeah, I mean, if
city
you-
parks in that
I mean, if you go
neighborhood?
back to the satellite, there's no, on the north side of Central Street, there are no, on that western side, there are no parks between near, in the 7th Ward over by Independence Park, and then there's the Rain Gardens, I don't remember the name, and then I believe there's Lovelace Park on the far west, but in between there are no. Bench Park South, right, but I'm talking north of Central Street, there's not.
I don't know if I can answer your question. We're somewhat lucky. This was built in 1922. The Sanborn map that's available is from 1924, so it's very shortly after. It shows the original volume of the school. It shows the entirety of the open space surrounding it as a single parcel. It actually it extends all the way up to Isabella in that Sanborn map. The next available is not very useful, but there is an in-between. The state conducted an aerial photography survey, a high-resolution aerial photography survey in the 1930s. That's where you can then see the addition from Childs and Smith, and that's where you see the development of those parcels on the northern end. I don't know if the school district ever owned all of that or if it was just open space at the time, and when they drew the Sanborn map, they incorporated it, but it is useful.
Yeah, are you familiar with what Sanborn
I'm not,
map is?
no.
Yeah, I wondered about that. So for you and for anyone watching, because we all know what Sanborn maps are, but just for full edification, I suppose, that's the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company. Went back way before Willard was. I was going to say way before Willard was born, way before the building was built in the 19th century, and mapped actually the United States to keep track of where the wood buildings were, the brick buildings were, what the uses were, and all that stuff. And they didn't do it very often. That's what we're talking about. Like when were the Sanborn maps done? They might do it every generation. But just to keep track of it for their own purposes, for fire insurance purposes. But now it's an amazing record of what was here, and you can look at the Sanborn maps from all kinds of. It shows all kinds of amazing stuff, and so apparently we have a Sanborn map for that area from 1924, right? That's what I thought. So it'll show the school there, and it's just a drawing. They're available digitally now. Used to be back in the day, they were just pieces of large, huge like this size books, and you had to, open them carefully and stuff. But that's what we're talking about, Sanborn fire insurance maps. So that's a great resource. And it would, if I had been doing this landmark nomination, that it's actually the first place that I would have gone. So that's not a critique of you. It's just an observation that's for anyone watching. That's a great thing to look at.
I know what I'll be looking at after this.
Yeah, you can totally nerd out on that, and I highly recommend it. You can look at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, which I have spent too much time looking at the Sanborn maps of that, and so on. It's an incredible thing. But what I wanted to say about the grounds really quick is that there are, for schools, I feel like there's some character-defining features when it comes to the grounds. It's like when you're walking or driving past the school, you kind of feel like it's a school, in part because it's got some play spaces and some other things that those items or elements of the parcel I feel need to be elaborated on in the nomination in order to make it clear what is actually school. What embodies the schoolness of this place? Does that make sense? Was I clear about that? Okay.
I guess to follow up on that, when I visited, there was, I guess it's an outdoor amphitheater. There's a concrete, like semicircular amphitheater. Is that used for any curriculum, like education? It's in honor of two former Willard teachers. I'm just wondering if that's part of the school curriculum to have outdoor education, or
That's not something I'm familiar with. I don't have a child there yet, but that would be something I'd love to learn about. I have walked by that note. I know what you're talking about, and I've read the names that it's dedicated to.
something that I just did a quick search on the city public library has the historic, like you referenced, the historic newspapers, and found out that Mr. Rader was actually put on the ballot, like in short order. I guess Northwest Evanston wanted to have some representation on the school board, and so they put him on the ballot, and then he got elected to the school board. And I think it was around 1906 is when I found. So, do you think that had any way of influence, because how he got commissioned to build the school?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just wondering because, he lived in Evanston, right? But,
yeah.
And he had a prominent career. You listed in other cities. I'm just wondering, when they found someone local.
Right. I mean, he clearly had an interest in schools, as his design of Orrington and Willard show. So that could have, been spurred by his service on the school board. Absolutely.
Are you saying that we should honor early forms of craft?
No, I'm just. Well, and so the other question I have is, it was 2 years after the ratification of the 19th Amendment that the school district decided to name the school after Francis Willard. Do you have any idea of how they figured to name it after Willard? Was there a public process to that, or did someone nominate and say, "Hey, let's do it in honor of Willard"?
Yeah, the only source I have is that newspaper article, and it just basically says the school board selected him. That there were other applicants, but it selected Rader. So I imagine potentially, I can't speculate on that.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So, right. So, moving forward, now we can decide if we want to close the public hearing or not, and we can then discuss. That then leads us to then discussing if this presentation merits landmark nomination. Based on the criteria that Mr. Weber presented, we can also add or subtract any criteria if we think his presentation, So
So I'll move the close the public hearing and begin discussion.
Okay. Do we have a second? Go ahead. Oh, you're just agreeing? Okay. So, Mr. Weber presented, sorry? Oh, so is everyone in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so unanimously in favor. So Mr. Weber presented the following criteria for designation. It was under Francis Willard was number 2 and number 6. For Mr. Rader, the architect, criteria designation number 2, 3, and 4. And then the development of Northwest Evanston was number 9 and 10 for the criteria of designation. Oh, we do have a comment from a commissioner who was unable to attend, so do you want to read that into the record?
Yeah, I can read it. This is from Commissioner Matthew Johnson. He's on fellowship at Yale currently, but he sent some comments. He says that the only issue he has with the nomination is the connection with Frances Willard is purely in the decision to name the school after her. That seems to me to be a quite tenuous link in terms of justification. She was an Evanstonian and distinguished, but he's not persuaded that that lends to the physical fabric of the school any greater intrinsic importance. He says, however, there is more than enough other material, the architect, the setting, the building itself, to merit landmark status on other criteria. He says that he's sympathetic to the designation as a landmark and that the case seems a cogent one to him.
I have a comment, if we're moving into that part of it. I was going to say exactly the same thing that our fellow commissioner just said. There is no question in my mind that Frances Willard was an extraordinary person and deserves all the accolades that she has gotten, and probably a lot more. But and so it is very hard for me to say this, but I feel I must, that I'm not sure that just naming the school after her qualifies as identification or association. If we had more information, that's why the question that you put to Mr. Weber about how we know, what that decision-making process was, I think is super important. Like, it's kind of crucial because it's these two criteria here, typically we're wondering, are those people significant enough? But in this particular case, that's not the question. The question is actually the identification with or the association with. And if that's enough. It might be, it's just that we need more information about it. I also agree, and that the other thing I was going to say is that I think that there's enough. We don't need to check all the boxes on every single criterion here. We just need to have one or more of the following. And so it seems to me that there's plenty in terms of some of the other things that Mr. Weber said. I could be persuaded that there's enough here with identification with and association with, but it feels like we don't quite have enough information to feel comfortable with that.
But don't we have enough for identification to the architect?
Yeah, it's the Willard part, the naming of the building after her. It feels like, I wish I could say that part was enough, but I'm not sure.
Right, but do you think the number 2 is just to the name, or can we apply it to the architect?
I don't know. Is that identification with a person or persons who significantly contributed to the historic, cultural, but architectural is there, so we could just say that criterion is relevant not for Frances Willard because we don't necessarily have enough information about the decision to name the school after her, but that the architectural part of it could be relevant. I think that's what Matthew was saying, and
Right.
and actually that was going to be my comment too.
All right. Do you all, I mean, I guess just sticking on criteria number 2, do you tend to agree with that?
I agree with the comments that the association with Francis Willard is not direct enough and not worthy of criteria number 2. And I think that the association with the architect, given his stature and the numerous landmark buildings, many in Evanston and throughout the Midwest, really fine examples of architectural style that does merit consideration under criteria number 2.
The other thing that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other thing, though, that did come up is that it's one of the only buildings named after a woman and one of the only schools.
Right, I think the way he presented it, I mean, currently there are 2.
Right,
It's Bessie
but-
Rhodes and there's Francis Willard, but moving forward next year, it will be the only school in the district that's named after a woman.
Yeah, I just, is there any precedent, Cade, for just the naming being considered enough? I just, she's so important. I would love to be able to say that that's enough, but I just don't know.
I couldn't find any other examples.
Can I just add a comment to my previous statement? And there's a little bit of an overlap maybe between criteria number 2 and number 4. And while number 4 talks about the identification as the work of an architect, et cetera, I think it's not really naming that work in that criteria. So I think if we're honoring an important architect as part of this nomination, I think it really falls on number 4 and not number 2. But I'm curious about Cade's interpretation on that.
Sorry, I think Commissioner Jacobs was talking about if it should be under 2 or 4 for the identification and relationship with Rader, the architect.
Most commonly, ones that were designated under criterion 2 or whatever that translated into before the 94 ordinance, prior to this ordinance, they split the criterion into architectural criterion and historical criteria. Number 2 is it's been translated from originally it was historical criteria, and I think when you look at landmarks designated under that, it doesn't include the architect. It includes some individual that contributed to some cultural, social, historical aspect to the city. If it was associated with an important architect, that's what translates into number 4, which was prior to this ordinance, one of the architectural.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. So I'm amending my comment to support criteria number 4, not number 2.
Because that's why I asked the question about the school board, was because Mr. Rader was an Evanstonian who also served on the school board, one hat, and then another hat, he was building and designing buildings. So I was trying to understand how do we, associate the 2 different roles with the same person? If one is more, I guess, cultural and the other is more architectural, or?
My feeling is that his work outside of any school board achievement is exemplary enough to merit that.
So I'm still on how to incorporate Francis Willard on this.
Right.
And I'm not going to apologize for that either.
No, you shouldn't. Oh, you should,
Because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but it bothers me here a little bit. So for number 6, association with important cultural or social aspects or events in the history, etc. I mean,
He did say it's the first building to be named after a woman in Evanston, I believe.
he did say that, and I'm wondering, I mean, we have, his presentation gave a little information. I'm just wondering if the WCTU or something locally had some effort in because it was 2 years after the ratification of the 19th Amendment, so this was a huge cultural event in the country, and to have the WCTU headquartered here and have her be the president and the dean of Women's College at Northwestern, it's like there's so much importance that it seems like the society at large was just, brimming over, just like we need to start celebrating women. And so I guess that's what led to this naming.
Right. So could we tonight vote to explore more information about number 6?
Yeah, you don't, basically what you're doing now as a group is determining if you feel, and you don't have to take a vote on it, if there's some kind of general agreement that one or more of the criterion are met and integrity is met, and then basically do you want to continue with the process and develop the report within the next 70 days? That report, or the direction that you're giving is, yeah, we want to explore, as a commission, we think it's important to explore number 6 further. If it comes out at the end of the day in the report that that's something that's significant, that's great. Or if it through that process, it doesn't generate the same traction that's expected.
And then the report comes back to us
For an actual
vote.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that's how I would urge my fellow colleagues to go. I would say maybe we dig a little deeper on number 6 and try to work that out. See if there's an extended connection with the first building named after a woman, the 19th Amendment, that stuff. And then also to see if we can fill out the history of the site a little bit more.
I'm curious too, the word association, as a non-architect, this might mean something different to other people, but like associations are built over time so often. Like is an association at birth different than an association that's built over 100 years and any less meaningful? Like, can someone speak to like the sort of like intellectual nuance of why that isn't the case?
So some, Kate, you're going to stop me, right, if I say something that isn't relevant, please. Some places, some municipalities have period of significance, right, where we have to say this is the time period during which the whatever is makes this place significant occurred. We do not here in Evanston, so we do not have to say that the association occurred in 1924 or 1924 to when was the Childs and Smith 31?
1931.
Yeah, we are not obligated by our ordinance to place limits on what that association needs to be. So we could, do a little bit more research and see if there's some way of thinking about the association with important cultural and social aspects that we have some flexibility. Is that a good answer?
Good enough.
Does that good enough? Thank you. I mean, does that explain a little bit what you were asking?
I just could imagine, and I know, other examples come to the top of my head, but like a place has a birth and an intention, and
And a
so
life.
often that changes.
Right.
And then that becomes the identity of a building, and the associations thereof might supersede in the individual, the initial intention.
Right.
And like, does that matter for this criteria?
Right. So it does. So that gets back to period of significance again. I have worked on landmark nominations for other cities in which actually when the date of construction was not part of the period of significance, because what was important about the building actually, what the criteria that made the building significant, historically significant, occurred after it was actually built. In this particular case, we don't have a period of significance, so the word association is stretchy.
So, I don't know, but like, if Francis Willard were born in a home in Evanston, and that home is, landmarked, but it was built it's not of particular architectural importance, perhaps, or not, built by an architect of esteem. Like, is there not history? Is there not precedent for landmarking buildings named for or lived within, important people?
There are, but when you go to actually make changes to a building, what is significant? What is the element of the building or the property, for that matter, that is causing it to be historically significant? Those are the elements that need to be protected.
So a local example, I think it was in 2018, the Preservation Commission voted to landmark the former Foster School, and it was the criteria that they used to for that landmark designation were mostly cultural significance, not for the architectural significance of the building. So I guess that's what I think you're talking to, is that there can be a significant cultural aspect to a property, and that could be worthy of designation.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious, like, it didn't feel tenuous to me, and I just wanted to understand why, folks in the field felt like it was more tenuous.
Yeah, I think it's that typically when you talk about association between a person and some physical component, I think that's the issue with that Commissioner Johnson had, at least, is that the association is the name. The association is not physical in this case. Now, I understand the argument you're also making is that association has become physical over 100 years since it was developed, that it is now associated with her. But I think when you look at what that criteria is probably intending, is that there's some initial physical association between the person and that place. Her rest cottage is a wonderful example and ties it back to a period of significance as well, is when she inhabited that building on Chicago Avenue. What is the physical association? What's the physical characteristics of that building that communicate that time and place that she was there? And that's how it should be retained and actively managed to retain that, so that it continues to communicate that association. So I think it's not impossible to make the connection that you're saying. I think it just becomes much more nebulous.
That's really helpful. No, I get it now.
I mean, I think that if just naming a building after a significant person was enough for landmark designation, it would, there would be a lot of landmarks in the city, more than the intent. Mm-hmm. But if we had information about perhaps she was involved in causing the school to come into existence, and that is why it was named after her, or after it was built, she did something there that sort of cemented the fact that it was named after her. That's why we were asking for more information, because just to be named after it is, yeah.
I have two questions. One is the construction and the naming. They could have been happening at the same time. We don't really know that there wasn't conversation about naming the building for her before the building was built. She was a very famous person. Come on. That's one thing. The other thing is that, is there a plaque or some kind of recognition inside the building that may address the relationship?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Is there?
But in any case, we don't have to solve that mystery right now. It's right, Kate?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the only other thing I'd say is that it becomes more difficult because she had been dead for 30 years by the time the school was built. I think even if you could make some connection, even that like during her life she had lobbied for development of a school in this area or something, those are the kind of associations and connections you can have.
Well, I mean, she was a huge supporter of public education, and so I think that's where we need to get more information, so we can kind of end this this loop of
Right.
trying to figure it out right now, but
Right, the reality here is that landmark nominations do not need to be the history of the building.
Right.
Those two things are not necessarily, all we need to do is fill out the criteria for designation, and then we have what we need. If the intent is to fill the nomination with information that people in the future might need to protect the building, then we need to have, which is usually the reason why something is landmarked, right? Then we need to have some sense of what elements of the building or property are contributing to its significance, so that then we can put that in the landmark nomination and say, these elements are, these elements are not. These windows from 2001 are not, related to the associations for which it is historic, so that would be highly significant character-defining features, significant character-defining features, contributing character-defining features, all those kinds of lists that then help us on the commission when somebody comes to make a change to the building. Not that wouldn't happen when District 65 is an owner, because we don't have review over it. But if District 65 wasn't the owner and somebody was coming to us, we'd want to look at the nomination and say, okay, what does the nomination say about which part of the building is historic and which part isn't, so that then we can make some informed choices about what to protect and what not to protect, and the extent to which things need to be protected, all that stuff.
I do want to close the loop on
yes,
item
and
number
I
two,
think
but-
that is a perfect segue to number 3 now, to talk about architectural significance. Like saying, because you're talking about, what are the features of the building worthy of landmark? If you look at the exterior design, and I think he presented to that most of the original intent and design of the building is still intact. The fenestration and the massing of the building, even additions were sympathetic to that, the 1931 Childs and Smith addition too. So, does anyone have anything that stands out to them about architectural features which are worthy, that make it worthy of landmark designation?
Yes. I think it's a really fine, elegant example of Georgian revival architecture, and it has at least 2 components that I think are unique and innovative, but stay within the realm of Georgian style, and that is the dual entry points. I think is really interesting, handled really elegantly with the bookended arched entryways. So often, Georgian style, and particularly Georgian style schools, have the center entryway with the portico, mimicking a center hall colonial home. This doesn't go in that direction and yet stays Georgian. I think it's really interesting and really nicely done. The use of the arches within the elliptical arches on the Hurd Street facade is also really interesting and not common, but not unheard of either in that style. So I think based on those comments, I'm a strong yes on criteria number 3.
Because there are schools in Chicago that have like a boys' entrance and a girls' entrance, and I'm wondering if this is like echoing towards that kind of that design, but it seems more democratic and equal, I guess. It's symmetrical. I don't know if I'm going down the wrong road, but
Looking at the floor plan, it looks like unless they put boys on one floor and girls on another floor, they seem to move to different staircases. So I don't know that
I don't
that's
think it was separated by gender. I think it's more programmatically. Probably kindergarten was, on one end and higher grades were on another, maybe, but.
What you so often see is there is that central entry point, and then at some point, there was a secondary entrance made, and it's like the side door, and it doesn't have the same kind of elegance that we're seeing here. So that's why I really like this.
One of the things, so I'm glad that, thank you, Kate, for pulling up an image that we can all look at. It's a really handsomely proportioned building. And John, I apologize if you already said this in your own way, but the center portico or the central sort of volume, and then the way that it steps back, it just feels right somehow, which is a very inelegant way of describing something that is very elegant. But even it has these two-story arched sort of groupings in the center, but that doesn't feel overscaled. It just works all together. And there aren't, without columns. Yeah? Really?
There aren't columns, but there are those circular, what do you want to call them, rosettes or something that are along the top that are.
The rondels between the
rondels.
arches? Yeah.
Right. Those are around, the whole perimeter of the building has that.
Yeah.
And then there's also decorative brickwork above that.
Does everyone know what the arch with the rondels references, or am I too deep in the architectural history? Right there. Does everyone know? Is it okay if I nerd out for a second?
Fine, yes.
Okay, so in Florence, there at the beginning of the Renaissance was the Ospedale delle Innocenti, in Italian, so, Hospital of the Innocents, I guess you would. And so that was the orphanage. And that was the early on in the Renaissance, it was the opportunity that the city had, the city government had in Florence to kind of demonstrate that it cared about the citizens. And also there was a guild involved. There's a whole story. I invite people, if anyone is interested, in looking at a foundational building for the beginning of the Renaissance in Italy. And that is it has this kind of arches with the rondels. It's a classic kind of horizontal building, and it's understated.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm right, that's also the building, the first time that they had capitals that were around the corner. Right?
Corner so I don't remember that detail. I'm just, so you're probably right about
Well,
that.
because I think it's that those rondels are kind of what cohesively
Pull it all
pull
together.
the whole building together, and there is this kind of a intention of a column if you look at the void between the two arched, and then they have the rondel on top. There is kind of a
Yeah.
implied column without having one there.
In any case, the architects at this time in the 1920s would have assumed that other architects knew what I just said. That was like what was taught in architecture schools at that time. The sort of foundational buildings of Renaissance architecture. I mean, that's just what it was. That's what part of what architectural education was at that time. So in any case, when I see that, that's what I think. And that's what they would have in the 1920s also think. And that is a very standard way of indicating a kind of concern for the welfare of your citizens in architectural terms. I'm sorry? Yeah, that there's a public motive. So from an architectural perspective, that's a little kind of detail that if you know what you're looking at, is very clear. So hopefully that helps. And I'm going to stop talking now.
Well, if I'm correct, these three arched window groupings are at the end of Park Place, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're going down Park, that's the vista that you see going down the street. So there was a clear intention to have that be the culminating vista of Park Place, which is this grand street with large parkways. And I think going to what you're saying, I think the context of this institutional building within a very residential neighborhood. I think it does it does it well that you have this, school building, but then also fits within the context of the massing of the other houses around. And the brick is, I think, goes back to just that there is not in the center part, but on the side, what is it? There's just, it is not super ornate, but there is some intricate brickwork that does add some, higher style architecture to it. Then it's just not just a flat running bond of brick.
It's typical of this time period to have these little details interwoven. I mean, it's
And just for everybody's benefit, the original volume of the building is here to here. This is the 1931 addition by Childs and Smith. There's also a single-story addition on the west end, and then this is the 2001 addition further north.
Is that the kindergarten room or? I'm just wondering, I mean, we can't talk about the interior of the building, but it is an interesting design choice to have the gym in the basement. And then I think there was, in your presentation, you were talking about the quality of light, that these windows are really large and have many lights to them to allow for the natural light and ventilation in the classrooms. And I guess that at that time, school design was talking about all this, natural ventilation and light and having access to the outside was, I guess, part of the design of schools at that time. So, all right. So, do you want to move on to now designation number 4 for the identification of the work of an architect? I think we all seem to agree that Mr. Rader's body of work and was significant, and then for this to be designated a landmark on that would be worthy of designation, right? Yeah. Okay. So that leaves us, we've done 2, 3, and 4. 6, we need more information. Mr. Weber presented 9 and 10 for the development of Northwest Evanston. Do you want to speak to either or of those?
I feel like those those points could be made about a lot of insignificant buildings as well in Evanston and anywhere, and that's not really just for this particular application. I find that those criteria could be made to apply to a water tower or anything. And so I'm going to need to hear a little more uniqueness as to why this particular property characterizes that any more than something that's insignificant would.
I think that's why we were asking questions about the property, and I'm wondering, Kate, does to be listed on under this landmark using this criteria, it's not only development of the area, but also aspects of the area before development occurred. Is that worthy of landmark? Like that, the fact that he was talking about that there were a large amount of, mature trees and having a rural setting, but then it became residential over time. Is that something that we could consider or not? Like the fact that there is several trees and a large green area on the property?
It's something you could consider. I don't know enough about the original and existing open space to tell you if that's communicating that kind of pastoral past effectively. Maybe it is. I think the stronger connection is probably, how did development of this school influence development of the neighborhood? Its existence then led to development, or vice versa, or they grew in tandem with each other. Is probably, those are stronger connections than the remaining open space, but it's a layer probably.
So in number 10, the part that I don't understand is too strong word, but that I'm struggling with, and I'd be interested to hear what others have to say, is at the end, whose components may lack individual distinction. And I'm not sure. I'm mildly speechless, which is unusual for me. What do you guys think about that? I'm not sure.
I think number 10, I thought we were talking about number 9. Number 10 is the most common criterion for a thematic multi-property designation. And that's the idea that the collective whole of these multiple properties creates distinction, where when they're separated, that significance is devalued, essentially.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that one is relevant in this particular case, since we're talking about a single contiguous parcel. I could be persuaded, but yeah.
Well, I think it's could be significant because while it's one contiguous parcel, the subparcels are very different and can be very different. They can include a parking lot, a paved parking lot, can have a playground, an open area, have a ball area. So and all those contribute to the way that the people around it live their lives. It's a park. It's a place for friends to. For people to play ball and soccer or whatever, and it's a place when friends are coming over for a party. They have a place to park their cars. It can impact in a number of ways, but one rather significant impact is that it's only occupied, it's not occupied the entire year. So I've always found, particularly school grounds, to be to really bring a lot of calm and orderliness to a neighborhood because of that summertime when it's kind of there for the visual enjoyment and activities, but it doesn't have, the traffic and uproar that would happen during school period. So I think the components together, having them all in the same place, is a kind of unique in that it's not like a factory or a shopping center or some other kind of activity structure.
Right. I mean, so I think you're saying that not only during the school year, but also during the summer, that it doesn't need to necessarily be used or active in order to be significant to the, right?
It's a big, calm, open space.
Right. And collectively, it's part of the school building and grounds go together. Yes.
So, yeah. But that's number, so are you talking about number 9 or number 10?
Mostly in reference to
Number 10.
number 10.
I mean, how is that different in this particular case than any school?
True. It's just in one other element of consideration.
Yeah, the exemplification of a pattern.
Those are my feelings about both 9 and 10, is that the pattern of the development and the school as part of that could be said of almost every development of every city, neighborhood across the country. And its physical presence within the context of that neighborhood as a school is also feels like every neighborhood school in every neighborhood.
I thought we were making our consideration based on several criteria and not just a single criteria. I'm just saying that there's a number of ways that this building and the grounds are significant. And while one or two may apply to another building someplace else, the combination of what we're looking at, I think, makes it a very important building.
I also think the way it's located on the property is part of the community, more so than most schools, because you drive right down the street and it's right in front of you. Kind of opens up the community.
So that feels like 9, unique location or distinctive physical appearance or presence.
Yeah.
You're talking about the way that the street kind of intersects with, the two streets intersect and the school is there as a kind of marker of importance. Like the school is so important that the street ends.
Right.
Which,
The street yields to the
right.
to the school.
Which a lot of schools are not like that.
Yeah.
Which I think can speak to how that whole neighborhood was developed. I think when we get to number 10, I think what the point is exemplification, that, is this like the premier example of that kind of, but I think 9 definitely is what you were talking
Right,
about.
right. That it doesn't, if it's the only one or if it's the most special one, then it's not exemplification of a pattern. It is unique location or distinctive physical appearance.
Right.
Right.
Right? Isn't that what we're parsing out here? Yeah. So 9 would be potential there. So we have, can we go back over it again? We have.
We have we have 2, 3, 4 for the architect, and then we have 6 potentially with more information, and then now 9 for the development of Northwest Evanston.
Just for my own clarification, I thought you had talked about number 2 being more historical, cultural in nature, and the number 4, since it's related to the architect, kind of subsumes that was what we were
Right.
considering, not number
I think
2. Was that incorrect?
My understanding was that number 6 was actually going to address the naming in a better way that 2 could. So I think that if others are in agreement that that 6 will take the place of 2.
So it would be 3 and 4 for the architecture. 6 for the naming Willard Association. So we need to do some more research on that, right? And number 9. And then the discussion of the site and all of that would be 3 and 4 and 9. Potentially, as the landmark nomination gets filled out.
So
And then,
I just want to ask a technical question if we're starting to kind of do our straw poll on what criteria we like or dislike. We're leaving here tonight with an idea of how we want to write a report, and based on various criteria, are we going to do a straw poll on each one of those criteria to see if each commissioner thinks that one or another has more or less validity?
I think you could choose to either do that now. The report, you have 70 days to adopt that in your formal recommendation. It'll come before you sometime in between now and then to review and discuss a draft publicly, so that could also occur then.
And ultimately vote on at some
And then,
point.
and then correct, and then ultimately there would be an actual vote on the report itself.
When we're done with there's an official resolution, and then there's the report, and that, both of those then go to the city manager and city council.
Correct.
So there is value, though, in honing the criteria so that we have a quicker,
Correct.
smoother process down the road when we do get to voting on it. Okay. Okay.
I was just going to ask, so, and then in terms of integrity, so sufficient integrity, so these are the 7: location, design, materials, and workmanship. Wait. So it doesn't follow the National Register?
Is it? I thought it was.
It says, shall have significant integrity of location, design, materials, and workmanship to make it worthy of preservation or restoration. So that's where we were talking about very significant character-defining features, significant character-defining features, contributing character-defining features, and non-contributing character-defining features. But typically, okay, so for everybody watching, if you don't already know, the National Register of Historic Places, which is the foundation for many ordinances like this across the country, and ours also, lists out 7 different elements of integrity. But what we're looking at here, which includes setting, feeling, things, locations on here, setting, feeling, and a few others that are not listed here in our ordinance, or at least in front on the sheet of paper that we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the actual ordinance includes all 7. It's just the nomination form.
Yeah.
So
You wanna
it's
read 'em so
integrity
that-
of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association.
Yeah, so those are the 7 that we need to think about in terms of integrity. But when it comes to integrity, the property does not need to have, it just needs to have sufficient integrity. And by integrity, we mean like, enough of those to convey the aspects of the property that make it significant. So if it's significant because of its amazing historic windows, but there's only 1 out of 300 windows that's like that, that might not have, it might be significant for the windows, but it might not have enough integrity to be landmarked. Did that make sense, Mr. Weber? Yeah. To someone who is, I'm trying to be transparent because sometimes these conversations get into weeds, which we know, but others, the members of the public, do not.
And this is just directly from the National Register. Historic integrity enables a property to illustrate significant aspects of the past. All 7 qualities are important to understand a building's integrity, but they need not all be present. It is recognized that changes occur over a particular building's lifespan, but its integrity can be maintained if the overall sense of past time and place are evident. Each of the 7 qualities shall be evaluated. Historic integrity is the authenticity of a property's historic identity, evidenced by the survival of physical characteristics that existed during the property's historic period.
Which we do not have a period of significance in Evanston, but in any case, if we're associating this building with, or determining that it's important because of its architectural, potentially also Willard connection, its location and distinctive physical appearance, those are the things which then we would want to go through the integrity criteria and say, okay, this does have sufficient, this does not have sufficient, so that then somebody in the future can make changes to it, or not make change, or be, have to collaborate with the commission in order to make changes.
Are you suggesting that we do that right now?
No.
Okay.
No, I just, if we're talking about straw polls and stuff, I mean, we're not just required to, I read the thing, it said A and B.
Right.
So if we're talking about straw polls, we've looked pretty deeply at the criteria for designation, but we at least need to acknowledge that there's
Sufficient, at least
a
there's
B.
sufficient, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it, I think it has sufficient integrity of definitely of location. And design, materials, and workmanship, probably feeling. We might need a little bit more information about setting. All seven are not in front of us. You want to say them again, please?
Location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association.
Yeah, materials seems like we have enough integrity. So, like workmanship seems fine. So that's probably enough.
Really, the only evident alteration when I've visited the site is the windows. The historic windows have been replaced with an attempt at being sympathetic to what existed currently, and not something that would meet our standards probably, but.
In other words, we could say that the windows do not have integrity, and in that case, anyone making changes to it would be justified in being able to make changes to the windows that are there, because those do not, anyway, they've already gone. They're not authentic to the elements that make the building significant.
The physical windows, yes, do not have integrity, but I think that the window openings
Right.
and pattern of fenestration, it has integrity.
Right, we're talking about the actual glazing, the structure of the windows. Yeah. But that's pretty common,
Right.
windows having been changed over time, so it doesn't necessarily, unless it's a building which is not the case, but in any case, unless it's a building that's like important because it was the first example of the use of a particular type of window, then the fact that the windows aren't there is grounds for not landmarking it, but that's not the case here.
All right, so do we need to take some kind of straw poll or to move forward with this?
Yeah, I don't think,
report?
I think someone can make a motion to begin development of the report, and that will come back at a later day within the 70-day requirement.
All right.
I would like to state some preferences on the criteria, and if anyone else wants to chime in, that's fine. If not, that's fine. I'm going to say outright that I don't think there's a case for criteria number 2. I'm finding criteria number 6. I'm skeptical, but there is one way in which I think honoring Francis Willard and the significance of the name could play out, and that is if we can find anything that indicates this was the first building name for a woman in Evanston. If this sent shockwaves through the nation, if we can find newspaper articles or anything that turned that into a bigger story than just one building in Evanston, I think that number 6 could have credibility. Outside of that, I'm kind of with Commissioner Johnson and his comments about that being a too indirect of a connection. 3 and 4, I'm a very strong yes on, for the reasons that have already been stated here, and 9 and 10 I feel are not unique enough in this this building in this location in terms of the pattern and development of the neighborhood, as well as its sort of setting as a school in that neighborhood. That said, I'm just trying to influence the report that we write. If 9 and 10 and 6 end up in there and I don't agree with them, I'm not going to deny this landmark status because I feel so strongly about points 3 and 4.
Right. It doesn't have to be a full history of the building. It just has to meet the yeah. And then integrity, John?
It's very strong integrity on every single point, so I assume everybody's going to be in agreement on that.
Do you, were you asking about number 9?
No, she was asking about 9. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, again, it depends how we write it up, but I think it is a feature of the neighborhood. More so, I mean, there's schools by, all over town that are just kind of tucked in, and this one's kind of significant for the neighborhood.
Just real briefly, the National Park Service, their own memorandum from 1995, says a commemorative property cannot qualify for association with the event or a person it memorializes. A commemorative property may, however, acquire significance after the time of its creation through age, tradition, or symbolic value, which I think there might be an argument for, just to throw that in there.
What can you state again what the bulletin was?
This is, and I'll send it. I'll send it to everybody. But this is the National Register Bulletin for the by the U.S. Department of the Interior, National Park Service, Cultural Resources.
Yeah, they're usually numbered. Does it have a number on there? It's okay.
Yeah, not that I'm seeing.
Okay, so this is the bulletin that's called How to Apply the National Register Criteria for Evaluations. That's the that's the core thing that we all in this world of historic preservation come back to, this particular bulletin.
Yeah, looks like redacted almost. I mean, this is the front paragraph.
Yeah, so that's we'll find the information. Maybe we can.
we can look at it
Yeah, but just for the record.
for the record, right?
Yeah,
We can always cite it when the report comes back.
yeah. It's from 1995, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes back a ways. I'm not going to say when I was using it first in my early career.
Charles, do you want to speak to anything, or do you?
I guess a little. I think everyone pretty much agrees on 3 and 4, the reference to the architect and the work. I am sympathetic toward number 6, and I think about the time when the building was built and when the actual naming occurred, and the fact that it was named for a woman at a time when probably there weren't a lot of buildings being named for women. Because I think of the landscape side of things a lot. I think that 9 and 10, the association of the building with the grounds and the impact that it had. I mean, I think we tend to think about what we're looking at now and the way it looks now, but 100 years ago, the impact. I'm sure that it had a significant part of shaping the space around it and contributed to its historic presence and just by being an old building, and so I'm kind of feel that those criteria are possibly valid from that perspective.
And integrity, do you?
There's no question. I think the integrity is not a question. Yes, on integrity.
Right. So I think we're unanimous on integrity. It's just developing the report with some of these criteria with 6, 9, and 10, I think is where we are, some of us are more in agreement that it is, and then others not so much. But definitely 3 and 4. All right.
3, 4, and 9 seem strong.
Yeah.
So I just asked Kate if are you the person writing it, or what's the next?
Yeah, usually, at least the way that we've done it for the past couple is that this dialogue that's happening here is extremely valuable for me to draft something initially, and then you review that, and then that gets discussed sometime in between the actual vote in a public space, in a public one of the meetings, and then you can critique that. I take that critique back. We make sure we're in a place where we feel like we can adopt it, and it comes back for. So then after the 70 days, at some later time, you're making a motion to adopt the actual report, and then you're making a separate motion to adopt the resolution, which has the specific criterion within it, and then all of that gets transmitted. I think it says to the city manager, who then sends it to the city council.
So you would take what Mr. Weber has done and incorporate that and build on it based on what we've said. And then we have 70 days to address it publicly in some way. Is that the deal? Or do we actually have to make a vote?
You actually have to vote on it within that 70-day period.
So we need to see it before that.
Correct. That's why I'm saying it'll come back
Yeah.
at some point in between, so that you can review it.
So we have.
What is 70 days?
we have-
February?
I think so.
Sorry, Carl.
No, I think you're right, because we have that time period to look at it and then vote on it.
February 10th.
So we need to see it in January.
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And certainly you can.
Just,
I know with holiday season, it's
Yeah, it's
tough,
hard.
but
Anyway,
but
then-
I think that's why we had this discussion
It's really
to
valuable.
assist with the
Right.
drafting of the report.
right.
Some reports are really lengthy, some are not in
Right.
the past. And then it's the commission's recommendation and report that gets sent to city council for consideration. It's not, the work of Mr. Weber is very valuable to bring it to the commission. You can build upon those ideas. You can reject certain ideas.
So I have a question. Let's say we vote on the resolution, we've approved the report, it goes to city council, potentially they vote on it. Does this report, is that the basis of what then becomes the statement of significance for the landmark property?
So, reports from the majority of landmarks that we have are non-existent because this requirement didn't exist. That, the statement of significance was the report, essentially. The report would be attached, certainly, to the designation. You would then draft a separate statement of significance. One of the powers the commission has is to write and approve and revise statements of significance for properties. So assuming that it was designated, that would the statement of significance would come back in front of this commission to actually write, review, and adopt. And typically that includes, it includes more of the character defining physical components of it. You're trying to allow some future commission a guide for how to actively manage the property, what portions can absorb change,
Right.
what portions cannot.
But it's unique because this is a school building and they don't have to comply with city permits. So technically, the statement of significance would not apply while it's a school building, but if it were potentially under new ownership, they would then have to apply for certificate of appropriateness, which would then use that statement of significance to understand what what work could be done and then assist the commission, right?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. I also think it's important to state for the record that, yes, the school district is not required to follow the ordinance. In the past, the school district has been a really wonderful partner to willingly try to find solutions that meet the standards and are mutually agreeable. So they do not have to do that. But I think if you look across many of the landmark buildings, there has been an attempt to create more sympathetic outcomes than they are required to, at least in the past. So I think it's to their benefit too to help guide decision making, even if they're not required to follow it in any kind of binding way.
We can get into all the details of the significant, very significant contributing if we want, later. But I feel very strongly that that's a really, really important part of a landmark designation, because that's actually, that way future commissions don't have to have really struggle over what did we mean, what did we not mean, is this part of the integrity, is this whatever, we're having the full conversation now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's a helpful guide moving forward for everyone to.
Many of our conversations here as a group would have gone much faster and been much more clear for us, for the applicants and stuff, if we had lists of significant features for every building, every landmark in this city, but that isn't a thing yet.
But we can start now and
Yes.
moving forward.
Yes.
Start building that.
Yes.
So, all right. Does anyone else have anything to say about criteria or integrity to assist with drafting the report? If so, do we need to make a motion then to?
I think it's beneficial. You probably don't have to. But
We don't need to?
I think it's beneficial
Okay.
if you do.
All right. So would someone like to make a formal motion to commence or start the drafting of this report that we can then review and vote on at a future meeting? Oh, fine. I'll make the motion. Well, I can do it.
I thought John was going to do it.
Oh.
He had his finger right hovering over the button. Am I doing it? Are you doing it? I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it. I would like to make a motion to move ahead with the landmark designation report for Willard School. I don't have the address in front of me. And the Pres, 2700 Hurd, 25 PR, Pres, 0120. With criteria under A, criteria for designation A, 3, 4, 6, 9, and 10, potentially in terms of the report. And under B, strong integrity. Do I need to say anything else? Okay.
I'll second that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous vote on that motion. And at a future meeting, we will then review the draft of the report. Thank you, Mr. Weber, for your nomination and presentation. And I guess with that, we can, we don't need to close the public hearing. Oh, it's already been closed. That's right. So with that, we can adjourn the meeting.